very good evening to all our viewers. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. For the news first team, I'm Yuki Portia. Before we head into your stories in detail, let's start off with a look at your headlines for tonight.
News First Headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat killed in Tamil Nadu helicopter crash. All 14 passengers on board killed in the crash. Semi-government employees on sick leave. Various protests in Colombo demanding salary increments and the protection of public property. Consumer Affairs Authority informs gas companies to recall all unused gas cylinders with the old seal intact.
තීල් එක කඩලා නැතිව දැන් අපි ඒව ආපසු ලබා ගැනීමට ඒ අවශ්‍ය උපදෙස් ලබා දෙනවා. ඒක තමුනාසලේ තමයි ගෙවල් වල ගිහිල්ලා මේ බිත්තර රකින්න වගේ ගෑස් සිලින්ඩර් තියන් ඉන්නවා කියලා.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa makes new revelation. Discussion headed by Army Commander on green agriculture. Sri Lanka's foreign reserves dropped to $1.6 billion. Can Sri Lanka pay back its loans?
News First Headlines. Main sponsor.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Starting off with your top story for tonight, Army Commander General Shasheendra Silva chaired a meeting today on Sri Lanka's transition to a green agriculture. The Green Agriculture Operations Centre, launched by the President recently, is being led by the Army Commander. Agriculture Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage and State Minister Shasheendra Rajapaksa were among those present during the meeting at the Agriculture Ministry. The heads of the two state-run fertilizer companies and ministry officials were present at the meeting, during which a joint work plan was discussed.
We discussed how the Agriculture Ministry and the Army can join hands and take steps to promote organic farming during the next cultivation season and also produce solid and liquid fertilizer. We hope to make this plan successful with the support of the Army and other military units like the Navy and the Air Force. This is not something that can be done by the Agriculture Ministry single-handedly. We will fail if we try to do it alone. This is a massive plan. We are ready to join hands with anyone and not just the Army.
Agriculture Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage refused to comment to the media. The Green Agriculture Operations Centre, led by the Army Commander, has been vested with several tasks. This includes forming a national organic fertilizer distribution company by merging both state fertilizer companies. China's Deputy Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Hu Wei, met with Speaker Mahinda Pabewardena at the Parliamentary Complex today. News First made inquiries from the Speaker on the matters that were discussed during the meeting. He said the Deputy Chinese Ambassador had told him that incidents like the recent crisis surrounding fertilizer must not occur in the future. The Deputy Chinese Ambassador had said Sri Lanka was given fertilizer through the best company in China when an order was placed for organic fertilizer. He had expressed his regret over the issues that arose over the stock of fertilizer. The Deputy Chinese Ambassador had told the Speaker that the ties between the two countries must be maintained in the future as well. Several unions from government and semi-government institutions launched a trade union action today. The Fuel, Ports and Electricity Joint Trade Union staged a protest in Colombo against selling national assets by calling in sick.
The protest was organized against selling 40% of the shares of the Kerawalapitia power plant to the New Fortress company in the US, selling off lands in the port that generates revenue, and splitting the Ceylon Electricity Board into 6 divisions. The CEB Joint Trade Union marched from the Ceylon Electricity Board to the Fort Railway Station and joined a protest launched by the trade unions representing the fuel and port sector. The protesters marched to the Presidential Secretariat to hand over a memorandum. 10 members of the Joint Trade Union were allowed to enter the Presidential Secretariat to submit the memorandum.
We discussed matters regarding the LNG deal. They said we will be allowed to discuss the matter with the President and the Prime Minister in a week. As trade unions, we expect the President and the Prime Minister will pay attention to this and resolve this problem for which the Fuel, Ports and Electricity Joint Trade Union is protesting. If the promise is broken, the Fuel, Ports and Electricity Joint Trade Union will teach the government a good lesson. Just like how port workers protected the East Container Terminal, we will fight to protect these three sectors.
Several trade unions from government and semi-government institutions staged a protest near the Parliament roundabout by calling in sick.
The cost of goods have increased 3 or 4-fold. The cost of bread has increased by about 80%. This is around a 40 rupee increase. The cost of a kilo of rice stands at 150 rupees. The cost of a gas cylinder has increased to 2,600 rupees. But the salaries haven't been increased. The entire labour force of the country opposes the government. Increase salaries by 10,000 rupees. Abolish the circular increasing the maximum retirement age to 65. On the 2nd of January last year, the Cabinet had convened a meeting and decided to stop the payment of pensions by saying it will be given again through the upcoming budget. 3 budgets came after that, but the government did not take steps to resolve that in any of those budgets. We took to the streets demanding Basil Rajapaksa to withdraw his statement that the public service is a burden to this country. We would like to remind the government that we will take to the streets if they don't resolve the problems of the 9.4 million people in the working class of this country before final decision is made on the budget on the 10th.
Services at the Central Mail Exchange and other post offices in the country were interrupted due to the trade union action today.
The nursing profession supplementary to medicine and paramedic service unions launched an indefinite strike action from today. The trade union action has been launched, citing that their demands have not been solved for a long time. A protest was staged opposite the Kurunegala Teaching Hospital as part of the trade union action. Services at hospitals in the northwestern province were disrupted because of the trade union action. Our cameras captured the situation at the Kurunegala Teaching Hospital.
පොඩි මිනිහා තමයි හැමදේම තැලෙන්නේ කරන්ට දෙයක් නැහැ ප්‍රයිවට් ගන්න අපිට සල්ලි නැහැ මහත්තයෝ අපි දුප්පත් මිනිස්සු.
Patients from Nikavaratia, Putlam and Kalpitia who visited the Chilaud General Hospital were severely affected. The All Ceylon Ayurvedic Services Union staged a trade union action demanding a 7,500 rupee COVID-19 allowance. Medical clinics at the Ayurveda hospital in Borella were interrupted, causing extreme inconvenience to patients. Let's now toss over to a short commercial break. Do stay with News First. We will be right back.
Bellboy's got you covered. Download Bellboy today to get all your household appliance fixing and repairs done. Now available on Android and iOS.
Valuable Finance, best finance company.
Welcome back to the news. The Indian Air Force says Chief of Defence Staff Bipin Rawat and 13 others have died after their helicopter crashed shortly after takeoff today in Tamil Nadu.
Indian media reported that the helicopter hit a ridge line and crashed into the trees. General Rawat's wife, his defence assistant, security commandos and Air Force personnel were among the 14 people on board. General Rawat had taken a flight from Delhi to Sulur in Coimbatore earlier today. The crash took place shortly after the Russian-made Mi-17 V5 chopper took off from the Air Force base in Sulur for Wellington in the Nilgiri Hills. The helicopter was already making its descent and would have landed in 10 more minutes. It came down around 10 kilometers from the nearest road, forcing emergency workers to trek to the accident site. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh is closely monitoring the situation following the crash of the IAF helicopter. The minister reached the residence of the CDS officer to meet his family. Singh has already briefed Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the issue and is reported to brief Parliament tomorrow. The bodies recovered from the site of the crash have been taken to the military hospital in Wellington, Tamil Nadu. General Rawat, who was 63 years of age, took charge as India's first Chief of Defence Staff in January 2019. The position was set up with the aim of integrating the three services, the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. The CDS is seen to be the pivot of long-delayed modernization of the defence forces. He was also appointed the head of the newly created Department of Military Affairs. The crash comes a day after Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss defence and trade relations as India attempts to balance its ties with the United States. The meeting between Modi and Putin in New Delhi comes hours after the defence and foreign ministers of the two countries held a strategic dialogue to discuss reinforcing ties between India and Russia. The two countries also signed a slew of bilateral defence agreements, including India's procurement of more than 600,000 assault rifles from Russia. India's Ministry of Defence called it a quote-unquote landmark deal that would replace a locally made rifle with a modern weapon, ending the long quest for its army's needs. India has also begun to receive S-400 missiles from Russia this month. The two countries also signed an agreement to extend their military technology cooperation for the next decade.
Malik Adnan, the Sialkot factory worker who tried to protect Priyantha Kumara from a mob, detailed what happened on that of Kumara's murder in an exclusive interview with Newsfirst's Zulfiq Farzan. Now, he said he failed, although he wanted to save Priyantha Kumara in the name of humanity and to protect the reputation of his country.
He was visiting on that day to the different halls. So in one hall, when he was visiting, he removed some kind of pamphlet from the wall. So he put in those dustbin. So after that, they starting the shouting. After that, they start agitation that he insulting or misbehaving the proper name. So people start get together and they start agitation. Suddenly, Mr. Prada called me in the meeting. We were discussing other issues. So someone called me that people are not working. They have started to agitation. So I moved toward that house and I requested to those people that Mr. Prada doesn't know how to read Urdu, how to write Urdu. That's why he doesn't understand what is the actual wrote on that pamphlet. So, but they didn't convince by me. So later they start to agitation and move toward the company gate. So after that, some other company people, some other outsiders, some other people added in that group, and they attack on the Mr. Pranta office. In the meantime, Mr. Pranta exit from his office toward the roof. On the roof, they start to beat him, and I reach there and I try my best to protect him, but unfortunately I could not protect him. Yeah, I tried my level best to protect him, but I could not protect him. After that, they started more torture with rods, with scissors. After that, he died on the roof. Yes, I received the award from Mr. Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mr. Imran Khan, and I dedicated to the child of Mr. Pranta and the whole nation of Sri Lanka. So as well as the relationship between the Sri Lanka and Pakistan, they should not be disturbed with this incident. Actually, Mr. Pranta is my colleague, as well as my friend. So I want to protect him in two reasons. First reason, this one I don't want that my country face will destroy in front of other country people. So that's why the second thing is, as a human being, I want to save him that both things in my mind. And we should save the humanity as well as the face of my country.
The mortal remains of late Priyantha Kumara will be taken to the Pulhena cemetery in Ganemulla. His loved ones and friends have gathered here to conduct his final rites. Now his casket will be taken to the Ganemulla cemetery, and that's the place where he will be buried.
The remains of the late Priyantha Kumara were buried at the Pulhena cemetery in Ganemulla. Priyantha Kumara, a 48-year-old engineering graduate from the Premadasa University, had gone to Pakistan 11 years ago. He leaves behind 2 children. Eight more men accused responsible for the murder of Priyantha Kumara in Sialkot were arrested by the Punjab police today. Punjab police said that the accused were arrested using CCTV footage and call data. So far, a total of 34 men accused have been arrested over the murder of Priyantha Kumara.
Most Venerable Warakhagoda Gnanaratna Thero, the chief prelate of the AGRI chapter, has written to Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan. The chief prelate had said that he is impressed by the prompt action taken regarding this incident. He noted that the prompt action that has been taken provides assurance that justice will prevail to bring the offenders under the law.
Leader of the opposition, Sajith Premadasa, made yet another revelation today on domestic gas cylinders.
We are compelled to question whether it is the Consumer Affairs Authority or the Corporate Affairs Authority. I feel the Minister of Consumer Affairs is performing the role of a Corporate Affairs Minister. I have received information that the final load delivered to the Keravalapitia terminal does not include sufficient amounts of ethyl mercaptan. What is ethyl mercaptan? That is the substance which releases an odor when a gas cylinder is leaking. Litro says Laugh's gas will restore the initial content of the cylinder and add ethyl mercaptan to the correct ratio. They are not communicated. We found that out. Litro says to Laughs, ethyl mercaptan contents on our stocks are low. Support us and deliver some of your mercaptan to us. Laughs has transferred some of its ethyl mercaptan stocks stored in Hambantota to Litro. I have come forward to speak after obtaining all relevant information. Who is behind this fraudulent act? We wish to know, is it only an individual, an official, or group of officials?
Litro gas company ට ලබා දුන්නා. ඒ නිසා මේ සියලුම තොරතුරු සියලුම කරුණු කාරණා දැනගෙනයි මම කතා කරන්නේ. අපිට දැනගන්න ඕන කවුද මේ සාපරාධී ක්‍රියාව පිටුපස සිටින්නේ? එක පුද්ගලෙක්ද? එක නිලධාරියෙක්ද? නිලධාරීන් කණ්ඩායමක්ද?
The opposition leader expressed these views during an event to declare open a building constructed at the Sri Kemananda Dhamma School at the Udaberagama Punyavardhana Ramaya in Ambalantota. The building was constructed under the Sasanata Aruna program. Gas Lanka has rejected reports that gas cylinders are not being inspected for leaks before being released to the market. All cylinders released from our manufacturing plant are checked for leaks. There are 3 ways leaks can occur. It can occur through the valve, from the body of the cylinder and from the metal. We check these possibilities not just in a few cylinders but in the entire batch.
Gas explosions continue to occur in various parts of the country. A fire had broken out in a lined room in the Vanaraja estate in Hatton. Police said the fire had erupted after a gas cooker had exploded. The occupants and neighbours had taken steps to douse the fire. No one was injured in the incident. A fire had erupted after a gas cooker exploded in the Panagamur village in Kandy. A gas cooker had exploded at a house in the Goipala junction in Rajangana. The Consumer Affairs Authority has allowed gas cylinders with an unbroken seal to be returned to gas stores. State Minister Lasanthalagivana made remarks to this effect when the budgetary allocations for some ministries, including the Trade Ministry, were taken up for debate in Parliament.
Only unused cylinders or the ones with an unbroken seal can be returned. Are you assuming that people store gas cylinders like they do with eggs? People stand in queues and buy your gas cylinders so that they can use it immediately. Your directive implies that gas cylinders must run out either by exploding or by using it.
My personal view is we must admit that this problem arose because of the change in the composition of gas cylinders. The problem here is that the cylinders which we say is bad is still in line with the standards of the Sri Lanka Standard Institute. Even if it has 100% propane, it will not exceed the prescribed limit of pressure. The cylinders in circulation do not have a number attached to them. The chemical that is used as an odorant was also not present. We had to intervene to find these cylinders. For cylinders issued from yesterday, we have pasted special stickers. Now we conduct lab tests on products imported by both companies and release the products after testing the pressure. If there are other cylinders in the market with seals that haven't been broken, we have issued the relevant instructions to recall them as well.
ගෙදර දැන් තියෙන සිලින්ඩරය ගැන සැකයිනේ. ඒගොල්ලෝ පාවිච්චි කරපු එකට මිලක් අය කරලා අලුත් සිලින්ඩරයක් දෙන්න. එතකොට නැත්තම් වෙන දේ තමයි. ඔබතුමා කියන එක නිවැරදි. තමයි ඔබතුමා කියපු ක්‍රියාමාර්ගය අනිවාර්යෙන්ම අපි ගන්නවා. මේ සිද්ධීන් වලට වන්දියක් ගෙවනවද නැද්ද කියන එක පොඩ්ඩක් ඔබතුමා පැහැදිලි කරන්න. ඒක සම්බන්ධව අනිවාර්යෙන්ම
I am of the stance that we should take responsibility for that and serve some form of justice over these incidents. We can't provide 100% assurance for all gas consumers at the moment. Our target is to ensure that this problem will be resolved to ensure 100% safety. That is our target.
The minister in charge is not here today. Even in this case, the SLPP has shifted the blame to the SLFP. When a vessel carrying gas reached the country and when they couldn't unload it, the chairman of the gas company said that a massive scam has occurred. When we inquired into that, we came across these cabinet papers. To whom did he point his accusations? Was it at the former finance minister Mahinda Rajapaksa or former chairman Anil Koswatta? On the 1st of November, the chairman who made those remarks had awarded the contract to the same company again. I do not understand who they are trying to cheat. The government came to power to ensure national security. But today, apart from hunger and gas explosions, the people have to go to sleep in fear. The minister has admitted this, but there is no wrongdoer. There is no one to be punished.
On to another headline-making story for tonight. Sri Lanka's official foreign reserves have dropped further the end of November this year. Newsfirst's Chaturanga Hapuarachi joins us with more.
What is going to happen to the economy of the country? When you take a look at the reserves, at the end of October, the reserves in the country stood at about 2.3 billion US dollars. Now, that value has dropped by about 30% to 1.6 billion US dollars. Now, this 1.6 billion US dollars includes the SDR facility of the World Bank as well as gold reserve. When you focus the attention on the currency component alone, that value has also dropped by about 40.2% and currently stands at 1 billion. What does this mean to you and I? This means that at the start of next year, during the first quarter of 2022, there are several payments that have to be made as the government. Those are, we have an import bill, we have to import medicine, food, fuel, things like that, and as well as a component that has to be allocated for debt servicing. Now, from the data that is available right now to us, $500 million is required by the 18th of January 2022 as a payment, a debt servicing payment. We have 1.6 billion in reserves. Only 1 billion of that can be spent. It is in currency form, and we already have a 500 million debt servicing payment that has to be made. Where is the money going to come from? The second point that we have to consider at this point is that the finance minister, Honorable Basil Rajapaksa, was in India recently, and there were discussions made. There were several 4 key pillars that were discussed at this meeting in India. There we know that 400 million US dollars will come into the country through those discussions that happened. 500 million is required during the first month of next year alone. How will the money come into the country? Governor of the Central Bank, Ajit Niwad Cabral, set up a road plan. There was a mention of how money is going to be attracted to the country, especially from months October to December. Where are we standing in terms of that? Do we have adequate inflows coming into the country? And most importantly, can we service our debt and survive? This is the response that the Governor of the Central Bank provided.
Foreign reserves is not the only criteria when you have to look at the overall picture. You have to look at the cash flows. I have repeatedly said this. Foreign reserves can be at a particular level, but if you have reserves which are built up on a consistent basis with new inflows and outflows, then the question will be dealt with. That's what we are dealing with, and we are comfortable about dealing with it because we have so many inflows lined up, and that would be sufficient for us to deal with the outflows that are expected to be met.
Meanwhile, the economists ranked the Sri Lankan economy among the most vulnerable nations to the change in monetary policy by the United States Federal Reserve next year, a move which could tighten liquidity conditions for emerging markets and the broader developing world. Journalists raised this question from the governor of the central bank today.
There have been reports like that for the last so many years. I think in 2020 also they said vulnerable, they said 2021 will be vulnerable, now they are saying 22 will be vulnerable. There are people who want to see us vulnerable. But we have overcome all those obstacles and we have had a stable economy. Yes, we do have some issues to deal with and we are dealing with those issues. But that doesn't mean that we are in a vulnerable situation.
The prevailing economic crisis in the country was debated in Parliament today.
Our exports were not promoted and the necessary financial provisions were not provided as well. The Export Development Board was called by a president after 26 years by President Rajapaksa. That was the first and last time because the officials there are not so keen on meeting the president. Well, the convener has to make an appointment to meet the president, who has the right in the finance ministry to hold on to the Export Development Fund. Why has the fund been established? To promote exports in the country. I am the person who places the signature to impose the cess tax according to this act. We received 56 billion rupees from the cess tax. However, the Export Development Board was only given 300 million rupees. I requested to at least grant 25% of what we got from the cess tax. 300 million rupees was given in the last two budgets, but only 200 million has been given through this budget. What I am trying to prove is that a particular group in the central bank and the finance ministry are controlling the entire political landscape of the country and the parliament. This country cannot go forward in this manner.
We have to pay a total of $4.8 billion in debt in the period between February till September. We will only have $140 million at the end of this month. We will still have to pay $4.7 billion. This means we are bankrupt. The central bank presented their roadmap for the next 6 months. Now only a few months are left in that plan. None of their ploys has been successful. Finance Minister Basil Rajapaksa and CBSL Governor Ajit Niwad Cabral have an option. That is to go to the IMF. The entire system will shut down if we are unable to pay these loans. We will not be able to import anything. It was their government that gave us no choice but to pay $13 billion worth of sovereign bonds till the year 2030. It is because of the April 21st attacks and the COVID-19 pandemic that this crisis has worsened. I'm not targeting a particular group. But let me tell you something. If the former governor of the central bank, Indrajit Kumaraswamy, did not obtain that $4.7 billion loan back then, we would not have a red cent in this country. It is because of that move that day that we are able to breathe today.
News First brought you details about the halted construction work of the One Transwork Square project on Chatham Street in Colombo, which was being carried out under an investment of more than $450 million. Project manager Sunil Gunasekara told News First that the Chinese contractor attached to the project has not abandoned the project. The project manager points out that the construction work of 18 stories of the building was carried out even during the time of the pandemic, and that the Chinese employees have not yet arrived in the island following their vacation due to the prevailing travel restrictions. Project manager of One Transwork Square, Sunil Gunasekara, says that construction will be up and running once again as soon as they report to the site.
Moving on, parliamentarians of the Samagi Janabalawegya who boycotted parliamentary sessions for 2 days attended sittings today. They boycotted previous sessions, citing undue influence exerted by MPs of the ruling faction on opposition parliamentarian Manushan Nanayakkara, and also urging parliamentary authorities to ensure safety of the parliamentarians. Now, the Speaker informed Parliament today that a committee led by Ranjit Siambalapitiya, comprising senior policymakers, has been appointed to probe the events that unfolded on Friday and Saturday last week.
I wish to inform Parliament that I have appointed a special committee headed by Deputy Speaker Ranjit Siambalapitiya, which will include the following parliamentarians: Minister Chamal Rajapaksa, Minister Bandula Gunawardena, Minister Vasudeva Nanayakkara, Minister Dr. Susil Premadasa, Gayantha Karnathulaka, Rauf Hakim, Anura Priyadarshana Yapa, Vijay Herath, Ranjit Madhu Bandara and M.A. Sumandaran. I also wish to stress the importance of avoiding situations such as this in the future, especially when addressing the House. It is important to do so in a civilized manner without delivering speeches irately or addressing other members of Parliament in a derogatory manner. What is expected of the committee remains unclear. However, this can be viewed as a step in the right direction. You have to issue a directive on what you saw during those 2 days. You are the chief witness. We oppose this leaving the chamber. The Speaker made a statement on the words that were expressed during the party leaders committee meeting, at which Lakshman Kiryala was also present. Since those words are inappropriate for a civilized setting such as this, I will refrain from mentioning them. They are attempting to question you. Anyone can go to the Supreme Court or the IPU.
Supreme Usahawiyata යන්න ඕන කෙනෙක්ට පුළුවන්. ශ්‍රේෂ්ඨ අධිකරණයට යන්න. එහෙම නැත්නම් IPU එකට යන්නත් ඕන කෙනෙක්ට පුළුවන්.
My request to you even yesterday was to ensure that you rally the support of everyone to assure that such situations do not arise in the future. From here on, there will be no need to carry issues within the Parliament to external courts. There is no need for that.
The United Citizens Alliance expressed the following views at a media briefing today.
Ranil Wickremesinghe මහත්තයා විපක්ෂයේ ඉඳමින් කියනවා.
While being in the opposition, Ranil Wickremesinghe says he is not part of it. During the 2019 presidential election, we saw the side taken by Ranil Wickremesinghe. We saw how Ranil Wickremesinghe's allies were booed at the Ruan Valley Saya after Gotabaya Rajapaksa won the 2019 presidential elections. When this government was in the opposition, they kept harping on the central bank bond scam and said that everyone, including Ranil Wickremesinghe, will be punished. Now we can see how some members are leaving their side. Now it seems that Ranil Wickremesinghe is the mastermind in the government after all. Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Ranil Wickremesinghe are like trade partners. They had gone to a conference in Dubai. As far as we know, the media reported that it was the President and the Prime Minister who were to attend this. Ultimately, it was the President and Ranil Wickremesinghe who went there. Sir's government is implementing the liberal policies of Ranil Wickremesinghe that could not be implemented. The people have chased him away, but he isn't moving away even after being chased. He is someone who comes into the scene through various means.
නව ලිබරල් වැඩපිළිවෙල රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහට මේක කරගන්න බැරි වෙච්ච වැඩපිළිවෙල ජනතාව දැන් හත්තිලව මේ යෝධයා වෙලවලා තියෙන්නේ එළෙව්වත් යන්නේ නැති මිනිස්සු මොකක් හරි යටිකූට්ටු වැඩකින් ආයෙනවා.
The operators of the Express Pearl ship have signed an agreement with a Chinese company to remove its wreckage from Sri Lankan waters.
Express Feeders was the company that operated the Express Pearl vessel that sunk in Sri Lankan waters this year. It has signed a contract with the Chinese Shanghai Salvage Company to remove the wreck. The ship's operators said that the Chinese company has set up a team and prepared the equipment for the exercise. The wreck removal team will be supported by response tugs on a 24-hour watch to deal with debris or forms of pollutants. US-based Resolve Marine Company has begun recovering the containers and debris that fell over as the ship caught fire and sank. The vessel's operators said it is also working with Sri Lankan authorities to repatriate 8 remaining crew members. It said they are currently housed at a hotel in Colombo.
Newsfirst and the Gum at the movement was recognized by the United Nations volunteers for its contribution towards promoting and inspiring volunteerism in Sri Lanka. The awards ceremony had been organized in line with the 50th anniversary since the UN volunteers' introduction to Sri Lanka. The ceremony was held at the Golf Face Hotel in Colombo. Minister of Sports Namal Rajapaksa graced the occasion as its chief guest. Individuals, organizations and state institutions who contribute significantly to volunteerism in the country were recognized during the event. Newsfirst was also presented with a special award by United Nations volunteers for the promotion of volunteerism. The Gum at the movement was facilitated for promoting the importance of volunteerism in Sri Lanka. Commending his efforts towards furthering volunteerism in the island, Professor A.T. Aryaratna was awarded the United Nations Gold Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award. Roshan Mahanama and Kushil Gunasekara were granted awards of excellence. Powerhouse Limited and the Sri Lanka Rupavahini Corporation were awarded during the event. The Sri Lanka Scout Association also received an award, while other local and foreign organizations as well as representatives attached to the United Nations were recognized at the event. Time news here on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I've been Neil Koshia, along with our sign language interpreter Brandy Cruz via Zoom. Take care and good night.